My brother's wife demanded I give her half of my inheritance. When I said no, she turned my brother against me with twisted lies. So I exposed the truth at our family reunion and watched the shock ripple through the room. Let me tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. We are on a journey to our first 1,000 subscribers. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. I always prided myself on being the dependable one, the steady brother, the one who showed up early to help Dad fix the leaky roof, and who stuck around after everyone else left, just to make sure Mom didn't have to clean up alone. My name's Ethan, and I never imagined that my own brother, my only brother, would turn on me the way he did. Growing up, Alex and I were thick as thieves, always covering for each other's screw-ups and sharing whispered jokes behind Dad's back. But somewhere along the way, he started drifting. Maybe it was the job that never seemed to stick, or the way he let other people's opinions steer him off course. Or maybe it was Lauren. From the moment she stepped into our lives, she had a way of making everything feel like it was hers for the taking. I'd spent the last few years working a decent job at a marketing agency, nothing glamorous, but enough to pay the bills and let me tuck a little away for the future. After our parents died, Dad from a sudden heart attack, Mom a year later from cancer, Alex and I had been left to pick up the pieces. They'd left a modest inheritance, split evenly between us. It wasn't much, a small apartment in the city and a chunk of money in a joint account. But it felt like a final gift from them, a bit of security in a world that could be so goddamn unpredictable. I didn't want to touch it. It felt like an anchor to something good, something worth holding on to. Lauren didn't see it that way. We were sitting in my apartment the night she asked. It was supposed to be a casual dinner. Pizza and beers, laughter echoing off the walls like old times. But the air was thick with something unspoken, something I could feel even before she opened her mouth. "Ethan," she said, setting down her drink and giving me that practiced smile. "Alex and I have been talking, and we think it'd make sense for you to give us half of your inheritance." My fork hovered in midair, sauce dripping back onto my plate. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. I let out a small, confused laugh. "I'm sorry." "What?" She leaned forward, eyes wide and earnest like she was offering me the chance of a lifetime. "It's just, Alex has been struggling to get his business off the ground, you know? And it's not like you're doing anything with the money. You're just letting it sit there, right?" I stared at her, my mind reeling. "Lauren, that money isn't just lying around. It's my safety net. And besides, it's mine." Her lips tightened just a fraction. "Don't be so selfish, Ethan. We're family. Family helps each other." Alex sat there, silent, his eyes darting between us like a referee who didn't want to make the call. That hurt more than Lauren's words. The fact that he didn't jump in, didn't say, "Lauren, what the hell are you doing?" He just sat there, fingers drumming on his beer bottle, as though this was all normal. As though asking me to give away half of my inheritance was just another Tuesday night conversation. I put my fork down and looked her straight in the eye. "I'm sorry, but no. That money is for my future, my life. I'm not giving it to you." For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then she let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Wow, I didn't think you'd be so cold about it." Alex shifted in his seat, finally speaking. "Ethan, maybe it's not such a big deal. We're family. You know I'd do the same for you if you needed it." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Alex had always been quick to take and slow to give. And Lauren, well, she didn't care about fairness. She cared about winning. I felt my jaw tighten as I looked back and forth between them. "I said no," I repeated, more firmly this time. "And that's final." Lauren's eyes flashed with something I couldn't quite name, anger, maybe, or triumph. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms, lips pressed into a thin line. "All right," she said quietly, "if that's how you want it." The rest of the evening was a blur of forced small talk and stiff smiles, the three of us dancing around the crack that had split open in the middle of the table. When they left, I stood at my window and watched them walk down the street, my heart hammering in my chest. I felt the weight of what had just happened settle over me like a heavy blanket. Alex had always been the one I could count on, the one person in the world who understood what it meant to be a son of our parents, to shoulder the same history. But now, he was letting Lauren's ambitions drive a wedge between us. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The days after that dinner stretched on like a silent war. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be Alex calling to apologize or Lauren sending me another barbed message cloaked in politeness. But it was as if they'd vanished. No calls, no texts, no attempts to bridge the chasm Lauren had so carefully cracked open between us. I went about my routine in a haze, the weight of that night pressing on me every time I passed my parents' old photographs hanging in my apartment. Their smiles, frozen in time, seemed to mock me. Family, they said with every glance. Family above all. I tried to remind myself that I wasn't the one who had drawn this line. But the voice in my head, the one that always tried to keep the peace, kept whispering, maybe you're being stubborn. Maybe you should just give them what they want and keep things calm. I pushed that thought away. This wasn't about calm. This was about what was right. A week later, I finally heard from Alex. I was on my lunch break, sitting in my car, trying to block out the chatter of coworkers walking by. My phone rang, his name lighting up the screen like a flare in the night. Hey, I said, forcing my voice to stay neutral. Ethan, he said. His voice was tight, clipped. We need to talk. I let out a slow breath, bracing myself. About what? You know what? About the inheritance. I closed my eyes, pressing my thumb to my temple. Alex, I already told you. Just listen for a second, okay? He cut me off, his frustration bleeding through. Lauren's right, Ethan. You don't even need that money. You've got a good job, no family to support. Meanwhile, Lauren and I are trying to build something together. I could practically hear her words in his mouth, each one a carefully sharpened blade. Alex, I know you're struggling, and I want to help. But this money isn't just sitting there for you to take. It's what Mom and Dad left us. It's my future. He let out a harsh laugh. Your future? Ethan, come on. You're single. You don't have kids. You're hoarding money for what? A rainy day. That's not the point, I said, my voice rising despite myself. I don't owe you or Lauren half of what I was left. I'm not responsible for your life. The silence on the line was deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was icy. So that's it? You're just going to turn your back on me? On family? I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I'm not turning my back on you. But I'm not going to let Lauren bully me into giving up what's mine. This is about boundaries, Alex. And I'm done letting you cross them. He didn't respond. Just a long, ragged sigh before the line went dead. I sat there for a while, my phone in my lap, staring at the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. I'd never spoken to Alex like that before. Never put my foot down so firmly. It felt like tearing a piece of myself away, but there was also a strange, quiet relief in it. Like I'd finally said out loud what I'd been holding in for too long. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Memories of Alex and me as kids played in my mind, sneaking out to the creek behind our house, daring each other to jump off the rocks, laughing until our sides hurt. How had we gotten here? How had we let Lauren's ambition pull us so far apart? But even as the ache of those memories pressed down on me, there was a new resolve forming in my chest. I wouldn't let them guilt me into giving up what I'd earned. I wouldn't let them rewrite the story of who I was or what I owed. The next day, I got a text from Lauren. Just one line. We'll see how you feel when everyone knows what kind of man you really are. I stared at it for a long time, the threat in her words as sharp as a blade. But I didn't respond. I refused to be baited. I knew then that this was no longer about money. This was about power, about control. And if she wanted to fight, I was done backing down. Lauren's message stuck with me like a splinter under the skin. In the days that followed, I felt the weight of her threat pressing in on every quiet moment. The silence from Alex was worse than any argument, a heavy absence that made me wonder if I'd lost him entirely. I tried to push it out of my mind, focusing on work and the small routines that kept me grounded. Morning coffee, the quiet hum of my laptop, the steady rhythm of running at the park near my apartment. But every time my phone buzzed, I felt my stomach clench, half expecting to see another text from Lauren, or worse, a message from Alex confirming what I'd begun to fear. It was a Saturday morning when the first crack in the facade showed itself. My cousin Ben called me out of the blue, his voice low and hesitant. "Hey, Ethan, I just wanted to check in," he said, his words slow and careful. "I heard some stuff. From Alex." My pulse quickened. "What kind of stuff?" Ben sighed. "He said that you're hoarding the inheritance. That you're being selfish, refusing to help him out when he's drowning in debt. He said Lauren's been the only one really supporting him." I didn't want to believe it, man, but I closed my eyes, a hollow ache settling in my chest. "That's not true," I said quietly. "Lauren's twisting everything. She's the one who demanded I give her half." I said no because it's not fair. "It's not about me being greedy." "I figured," Ben said. "But Ethan, he's telling everyone. Family dinners, little comments here and there. People are starting to look at you differently. I thought you should know." I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth, forcing my voice steady. "Thanks, Ben. I appreciate you telling me." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the old photo on my fridge. Me and Alex, arms slung around each other's shoulders, grinning at some forgotten birthday. I remembered how we used to swear nothing could come between us. Now it felt like Lauren had taken that promise and twisted it into something unrecognizable. The next time I saw Alex was at a small family gathering, a cousin's baby shower. I walked in and felt the shift in the air before I even reached the living room. Conversations paused when I approached, laughter turned to polite, forced smiles. Lauren was there too, standing beside Alex like a queen surveying her court, her hand resting possessively on his arm. "Ethan," she said sweetly, her tone so saccharine it made my teeth ache. "Glad you could make it." I nodded stiffly, my gaze flicking to Alex. "Can we talk?" "Alone." His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw the brother I'd always known beneath the wary distance. But Lauren squeezed his arm, and he shook his head. "I don't think there's anything left to say." My heart dropped. "Alex, please, no." "Ethan," he said, his voice low and hard. "You've made it clear where you stand. We're done." I wanted to shout, to grab him by the shoulders and shake the truth back into him. But the words caught in my throat, strangled by the look in his eyes, cold, closed off, like I was a stranger. I turned and walked away, my hands shaking. I spent the rest of the afternoon with a tight smile plastered on my face, making small talk with cousins who looked at me like I was some kind of pariah. Every laugh, every toast felt like a thin layer of ice over a deep, churning lake. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, their silent questions. Is it true? Did Ethan really turn his back on his brother? I left early, the polite excuses falling from my lips as I stepped out into the cool evening air. My car was parked a few blocks away, and I walked slowly, trying to gather the pieces of myself that felt scattered across the pavement. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another message from Lauren. Just 3 words, "Your choice, Ethan." I didn't respond. I couldn't. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. I thought about all the times I'd picked Alex up when he fell. Driving across town at midnight to bail him out when he got into fights with his landlords, helping him move out of apartments he couldn't afford, giving him money to cover bills when his paychecks didn't stretch far enough. None of that mattered to him now. All he saw was what Lauren wanted him to see. And still, part of me wanted to believe there was a way back. That if I could just explain it, if I could find the right words, I could fix this. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger by the day, knew that no matter how much I loved my brother, I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for his mistakes. I turned that thought over and over in my mind as I drifted off to sleep, knowing that the next family gathering, the reunion, would be my last chance to set the record straight. And this time, I wouldn't hold back. The family reunion came on a warm Sunday afternoon in early May, the kind of day that used to feel like a promise of new beginnings. I arrived at my aunt's house, a 2-story home with a sprawling backyard that had seen countless birthdays and barbecues, and as I stepped onto the porch, I felt the weight of every memory pressing against my shoulders. The voices of cousins and uncles drifted out through the screen door, mingling with the smell of grilled burgers and fresh lemonade. But beneath the easy laughter, I could sense it, a tension so sharp I could almost taste it. Lauren and Alex were already there when I arrived. She was holding court by the patio table, charming my aunt and a few cousins with that bright, practiced smile. Alex stood beside her, nodding along, his face carefully neutral. For a moment, I just watched them, the way Lauren's hand rested possessively on his arm, the way he leaned in as she spoke. I felt like an outsider looking in on a play where I'd once been the leading man, now demoted to a silent observer. I took a deep breath and walked across the yard, the grass soft under my shoes, the conversations faltering just a little as I passed. My aunt turned to greet me, her smile warm but tinged with something uncertain, like she wasn't sure which side of the story to believe. "Ethan," she said, pulling me in for a hug. "I'm so glad you're here." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice steady, though my stomach was tight. My eyes flicked to Alex, who offered me a nod, cool, distant. Lauren just gave me a small, triumphant smile. For the first hour, I kept my head down, moving from one small group to another, offering polite hellos and catching up on cousins' new jobs and babies. But no matter where I turned, I felt their eyes, curious, wary, questioning. I knew the rumors were already there, thick in the air like summer humidity. At some point, I found myself alone by the drinks table, gripping a cup of lemonade so hard I thought it might crack. My heart pounded in my chest, and I thought about just leaving, about slipping out the back gate and letting them believe whatever they wanted to. But then I saw Lauren watching me from across the yard, her gaze cool and assessing, and I knew I couldn't walk away. Not this time. I took a breath and walked back into the center of the yard, my steps slow and deliberate. I found my uncle, the closest thing we had to a family patriarch since Dad passed. He was telling a story, his hands moving animatedly, everyone around him laughing. When he saw me approach, his smile faltered just a little. "Ethan," he said, "come join us." "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the way my pulse thundered in my ears, "there's something I need to say." The laughter faded. Conversations paused. Even the kids playing tag in the corner seemed to slow. I looked around at the faces that had known me since I was a child. Faces I'd celebrated holidays with. Faces that had watched me grow up. And I felt a surge of both fear and relief. I turned to Alex and Lauren, my gaze locking on them. "There's been a lot of talk," I said quietly. "A lot of things said behind my back. And I think it's time everyone heard the truth." Lauren's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed, just a fraction. Alex looked away, his jaw tight. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling at my sides. "Lauren asked me to give her half of my inheritance. She said it would help Alex get back on his feet. I said no, because it wasn't fair. Because it's my future, and I have a right to protect it." There was a murmur of surprise, I shifting from me to Lauren and back again. My uncle's brow furrowed, his mouth tightening. "She's been telling everyone that I'm hoarding the money, that I don't care about family," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "But that's not true. I've always been there for Alex. I've bailed him out more times than I can count. But I won't let someone guilt me into giving up what my parents left me. I won't let Lauren's lies define who I am." For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then Alex spoke, his voice tight and brittle. "Ethan, you're twisting this. You're making Lauren sound like—" "I'm not twisting anything," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm done letting you two spin this story to make me the villain. I'm done pretending that silence is the same thing as loyalty." Lauren's mask slipped in, just for a moment. Her lips parted, her face pale. "Ethan, you don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," I said, my eyes locked on hers. "You tried to turn my own brother against me, and I won't let you." The backyard was so quiet I could hear the wind rustling the leaves above us. My uncle cleared his throat, his eyes shifting from me to Lauren. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice low and measured. Lauren opened her mouth, but no words came out. Alex looked at her, his face pale, and for the first time I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. I felt the weight of it all, the fear, the anger, the heartbreak, settle into something solid in my chest. I'd spoken my truth. Whatever came next, I wouldn't regret it. The reunion didn't end in some grand reconciliation. There were no dramatic apologies or teary hugs. But as people slowly drifted back to their conversations, I saw the shift in their eyes. The questions they had were no longer just about me. They were about Lauren, about the cracks in the story she'd so carefully crafted. And when I left that afternoon, I walked away lighter than I'd felt in months. I didn't know what would happen next with Alex, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done letting someone else decide my worth. In the days following the reunion, the silence between Alex and me grew into something almost tangible, a thick, unspoken wall that neither of us seemed willing to tear down. My phone didn't ring, no texts lighting up the screen. The only sounds in my apartment were the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. It was a strange, hollow peace, one that felt both like a relief and a wound. I knew the fallout was still rippling through the family. My aunt called me the day after the reunion, her voice low and cautious. "Ethan, I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you for speaking up. I know how hard that must have been." I thanked her quietly, my throat tight. It felt good to be seen, to have someone acknowledge the years I'd spent swallowing my voice for the sake of peace. But even with her support, a part of me still ached for Alex, still wanted to believe that the bond we'd once shared could be salvaged. A few days later, I got the call I'd been waiting for. It was Alex. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "You humiliated Lauren," he said, his voice low and cold. I told the truth, I said evenly. "I didn't want to do it in front of everyone, but you left me no choice. You made her look like a liar, like some kind of manipulative." He stopped, his breath ragged. "She's my wife, Ethan. I have to stand by her." "I know," I said softly. "But Alex, you've been standing by her lies." "That's not the same thing." He was silent for a long moment, and I could almost see the conflict in his face, the way he used to look when we were kids and he'd gotten caught in a lie but couldn't bring himself to admit it. "You don't understand," he said finally. "Lauren, she just wants what's best for us." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I've always been there for you, Alex. I've given and given until there was nothing left. But I won't let you take this from me. I won't let you decide what I owe you." "You're being selfish," he spat out, the words like a slap. "You're putting money over family." I closed my eyes, the hurt sharp but clear. "No, I'm putting boundaries over manipulation." "That's not the same thing." He didn't reply. The line went dead a moment later, and I sat there with the phone in my hand, my heart hammering in my chest. I realized then that this was the final fracture. The point where the pieces of our relationship, already so fragile, finally gave way. And as much as it hurt, I also felt a flicker of something else: freedom. The fallout was swift. Words spread through the family. Some of them called to check on me, their voices careful and hesitant, while others fell silent, unsure of where their loyalties lay. Lauren, for her part, wasted no time trying to salvage her image. She called a few of my cousins, painting me as cold and unfeeling, saying she'd only ever wanted to build a future for Alex. But the story didn't hold the same power it once had. The truth was out there now, and no matter how many honeyed lies she spun, the seed of doubt had been planted. A week later, I ran into my cousin Ben at a coffee shop. He sat down across from me, his brow furrowed. "I don't know what to say, Ethan," he said quietly. "It's a mess." "I know," I said, stirring my coffee absently. "But I had to tell the truth. I couldn't let her keep twisting things." He nodded. "I get it. And honestly, most of us do too. We've seen how Lauren talks about money, how she acts like it's all owed to her." He hesitated, then added, "Well, he's blind when it comes to her." I swallowed hard, feeling both vindicated and sad. "Yeah, he is." I went home that night and stood by my window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. It felt like the end of something, a chapter of my life I'd spent years trying to protect, now gone in a single, painful break. But as I watched the cars pass by, their headlights carving paths through the dark, I realized that maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to let go of the fantasy that I could keep everyone happy, that I could be both the good brother and the man who stood his ground. Because the truth was, I wasn't responsible for Alex's choices. I wasn't responsible for Lauren's greed or her manipulations. I was responsible for me, my own dignity, my own future. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like that was enough. After the fallout from the reunion settled, I found myself in a strange, quiet place. It wasn't peace, exactly. More like a clearing in a storm, a space to breathe after years of biting my tongue for the sake of family harmony. There were no more calls from Alex. No more carefully worded messages from Lauren trying to spin the narrative back in her favor. Just silence, thick and final, stretching between us like a canyon I couldn't cross. I spent those days in a sort of reflective haze. I'd go for long walks in the park near my apartment, feeling the weight of what I'd lost pressing on my shoulders, but also a new lightness that came with knowing I had finally drawn the line. My parents' inheritance, the money they'd worked their whole lives to leave us, had become more than just dollars and cents. It had become a test, a symbol of how much I was willing to bend to keep everyone else comfortable. I thought back to the early days after Mom and Dad died, how Alex and I had clung to each other like we were the only family left in the world. We'd sat together on the couch, sorting through old photo albums, sharing stories about how Mom used to sing in the kitchen or how Dad would stand in the doorway watching the rain. Back then, I thought we'd always be on the same side. But somewhere along the way, that promise had faded. And no matter how much I wanted to believe it could be fixed, I knew now that it couldn't be, at least not by pretending everything was fine. One afternoon, I got a text from my cousin Ben. "How are you holding up?" he wrote. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "I'm okay. It hurts, but I'm okay." And it was true. It did hurt. Like a bruise I kept pressing, half out of habit, half because I couldn't believe the damage was real. But there was a calm in that hurt, too. A quiet knowledge that I'd finally chosen myself over someone else's demands. A few weeks later, I saw Alex at a cousin's engagement party. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. We locked eyes across the room, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the brother I used to know. But then he looked away, and I realized he wasn't ready to see me, not really. And maybe he never would be. Lauren was there too, of course. She gave me a smile that was all teeth and no warmth, her hand gripping Alex's arm like she was afraid he might slip away if she let go. I just nodded politely and moved on. There was nothing left to say. After that party, I stopped looking for ways to fix things. I stopped hoping Alex would show up at my door with an apology. I understood now that some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. And I was done letting those lines blur just because it was easier to pretend. In the quiet evenings that followed, I thought a lot about what it meant to stand firm. I realized it wasn't about shutting people out or holding grudges. It was about refusing to let someone else's choices decide who I was. It was about protecting the small, precious things that were mine, my future, my voice, my peace. One night, I sat down and wrote a letter to Alex. I didn't know if I'd ever send it, but the words felt like they needed to be said. I wrote about how much I loved him, how much I missed the brother he used to be. I wrote about how I wasn't angry anymore, just sad that he'd let someone else's greed come between us. And then I wrote the most important part, that I couldn't keep giving pieces of myself away just to keep the peace. That I was done. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Maybe one day he'd be ready to hear it. Maybe not. But I'd said my piece, and that was enough. When I think about my parents now, about the way they'd always taught us that family meant everything, I know they wouldn't have wanted this rift. But I also know they would have wanted me to protect myself, to stand up for what was right. In the end, I chose to honor that part of their legacy. And in doing so, I honored myself. So here I am, standing firm. The future feels a little emptier without my brother in it, but it also feels like mine again. And for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with that. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more gripping tales of family drama and self-discovery. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against those you love? Until next time, stay true to who you are. See you soon in the next story.